Yes, we are good to go.
Liv, welcome.
Thank
I know I said it
you.
already, but it's been so long since I've last seen you, so thank you for joining me
Oh,
today. How you been?
oh my God, life has been it's been crazy. It
Yeah,
has been crazy, but in all the good ways.
yeah.
Sometimes bad ways, but we make the most of it and it's all learning experiences. So we're here and happy.
There's a lot I want to get into with you, but I think first off, just you want to tell us what you've been up to and all that fun jazz stuff.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know where to start. My life has been so like nonstop. I would say like career wise,
You used to work at Holtz, right? Are you still there?
yes. No, 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 no.
Okay.
I used to work at Holtz, then I worked at Shiseido for a few cosmetic brands, and then there was a company restructure. So that was super fun and exciting. So they let go of the whole Canadian team. I live in Canada, so I was a part of it, unfortunately. I'm like, I love
You
that
know
for
what?
me.
It's always with the States, man. Like they bring something to Canada and then it lasts for like 5 years. Not even 5 years. I think 5 years is like a lot for them, to be honest.
Oh, no, no, yeah, it
You
was
know?
literally like max 2 years. Like when I had joined the team, I was there for maybe like a year and a little bit. And here I am thinking, oh, I'm a part of a private equity firm. They have all the money in the world. We're going to grow and flourish. I'm going to be here till I die. And then God said otherwise. So,
Yeah.
so we left that. And then I was able to work for a charity, which was a really, really nice opportunity. Such a fulfilling job and something that I will always remember down my career path. But that was contract, so I was only there for a few months and it ended literally like a week ago. So we are
Mm.
back in flow, as I like to say. Last
I
year when
hate
I
flow.
know, but you know what? The flow is so important. Like last year when I got let go because of the company restructure, I was like in sheer shambles. I was like, my life is over. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I
Mm.
hate being in this state of unknown. I feel like I'm floating. But I feel like mental dialogue is so important. So instead of floating, we are flowing. And
Yeah.
whatever comes, comes, and whatever exits, exits. And we take it to the chin. We remain positive as much as we can, and whatever happens, happens.
I never
So,
heard that before. Take it to the chin.
really?
Yeah.
You just like you take the hit to the chin.
I'm like writing it down.
To
Take it to the
the
chin.
just take it to the chin and it is what it is.
What did you go to school for? Or did you go to school?
I went to Ryerson, which is now known as the Toronto Metropolitan. I don't know who knows what the name, so we say both whenever I introduce my university. But I did marketing while I was there. But I always
Oh,
wanted to get
okay.
into the beauty industry because that's where my passion was. But my dad's like old fashioned. He's like, you're not going to make a career out of doing makeup. So I was like, okay, I guess not. So I went,
Thanks.
yeah, no, literally. Meanwhile, like nowadays, I'm like, I could have been making so much more money than working like a 9 to 5 job. I'm like, you set me up for failure, father. Not fully. We're still young, but we could have
Yeah.
been doing more if we were an entrepreneur, likely. So I went there for marketing, and then I always knew that I wanted to get into the beauty industry. So I worked at Holtz, then I worked for a few different cosmetic brands, which then kind of like led me into working for the non-for-profit side of it all. And then now I'm currently in flow again, looking for a new job, but everything happens for a reason. So this is a
Yeah, for
new and
sure.
exciting unknown chapter. And I know the unknown is scary to so many people, especially like to me a few weeks ago. I was like, I'm so type A, I need to have like a grip on every single part of my life. But I'm like, you can't do that sometimes. So we're in flow, is where we're
Yeah.
at.
You said you wanted to get into makeup. What specifically was like the avenue you would take with that?
I don't know, like when I was younger, I loved artistry. Like I always saw, I got into it myself. It's such a crazy story and it's so stupid. When I was in elementary school, the boy was like, what's on your face? And I got so insecure. So then I started wearing makeup. And then I was able to see like the impact that it really had on my self-esteem. And it wasn't a matter of like changing the way that I looked, but rather like enhancing it. So I started
Mm.
doing it for myself. I would play around with my own face as much as I could. Then I would do it on my mom and then on my friends. And I was really able to see the shift of like people's confidence when you just simply enhance people's features. Obviously, makeup, there's extremes where you could completely like change the way that you look, but
Yeah.
for myself, I feel like it's all just about like enhancing. So, I wanted to get into that when I was younger, but then my dad was like, you're not doing that. So I was like, okay, I guess not. So now I
Mm.
do like the brand management side of it, but I still get to get my hands in the artistry piece of it all. And I do a lot of volunteer work, working with people that are going through cancer treatments. So I'm able to help teach them how
Mm.
to take care of your skin, how to apply makeup. And honestly, it's so much more rewarding. Like everything that happened in my life happened for a reason. So I'm not mad about how it all kind of like panned out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's sweet, actually. I didn't know that was what you did.
Yeah. So yeah, like my last job, I worked for a company called Look Good, Feel Better. So they
Okay.
help men, teens, and women that are going through chemotherapy or radiation and teaches them essentially like how to take care of your skin, how to apply makeup. Because while you're going through treatment, like you don't really recognize yourself, right? Like you lose all the things that
Right.
make you feel like a man or a woman. And
Mm.
we kind of like help with that, but then we also help with the psychological piece of it as well. Because a lot of times when you go into hospitals, it's all about these are the different medicines that are going to help you, but they don't talk about the mental effects of it all, really, right? So that's kind of where our organization came into play. And it was a really big full circle moment because when my mom was going through treatment herself, she wanted to go to this program or these workshops. She wasn't able to do it, but I would always do her makeup. And I know that
Mm.
when she lost all of her hair, of course, her skin changed. You would just see like her glow again. So I was like, if I can use my skills of being able to do makeup artistry for a better purpose than just to have people simply look beautiful, but to actually feel empowered and like themselves again, why wouldn't I step into that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it honestly is like an amazing organization. Unfortunately, they had to do like it was a contract position where I kind of came in and helped more so with the business end of it than I did with like the day-to-day non-for-profit kind of pieces of it, where it's like sending out thank yous and whatnot. Like obviously there's stewardship when you're working for a non-for-profit organization, and I came in a little bit more with the strategy piece of it. So I did my role there, but now I was able to actually get involved and have so many beautiful experiences. And prior to working there, I always wanted to volunteer for the organization, but I was always hesitant because, of course, it was so triggering for me because I had lost my mom to cancer. So going to these workshops and seeing these women who don't have their hair, they look evidently sick. It was such a big trigger for me that I always kind of postponed it. I was like, oh, years down the line,
Mm.
like maybe when I'm a little bit more healed, or maybe when I am more okay with seeing that all again, I would do it. But this getting this position really kind of like catapulted me to do that. So
Mm.
we toughened up. We went to the workshops and now I volunteer on a monthly basis and it is the most like rewarding and grounding thing you could
Yeah.
possibly ever do. Yeah.
I do want to talk about your mom, but before we get into
Hmm.
that, you talked earlier about beauty and confidence. When do you notice when beauty becomes a mask versus an enhancement?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because I obviously I'm a guy, so like it's different for me, and like I've heard
Hmm.
conversations like stupid ones where people be like, "Oh, if guys get rid of their beard, like it's like makeup," and it's kind of
Yes.
like, okay, I get that. They get our brows on, yes. My response to that would be, it's not the same because like hair is who I like. It's part of me. It grows on
Mm,
me. I don't go to the
yes, I get what
store
you're
to get a
saying.
beard. Like, yes, I can clean up my brows and clean up my beard, and I look like Danny from the
A
block a
different
little bit. You know
person.
what I
Yeah.
mean? But like,
Yeah.
it is different, and like, what's your opinion on that or
Take
view,
on it.
or like, how do you even meet people that let's say you have friends and you can tell that like some of them are like actually really confident in themselves. They just want that like that extra
Little
glow.
like,
But then you see
yes.
others that are doing the exact same thing. It's just you feel the difference with them.
Yeah. I feel like it's almost like an energy thing. Like when I'm applying makeup on people and a lot of it also is like the conversation. Like,
You could just
I
tell
don't
right
know.
away, kind of.
Yeah, like I think it's also like the levels to makeup that you're honestly like makeup is makeup. I think a lot of it nowadays is more so social media. I think that's where it becomes like a whole other extreme. I think like obviously like makeup you can only do so much as long if unless you're doing like special effects and whatnot, or you're doing like nose
Yeah.
contours and whatever. Like those are still things that I feel like, yes, may alter a little bit the way that you look. Like for myself, like I did a little nose contour and I put a little bit of a contour on my jawline. I still look like this, but it's more enhanced,
Mm.
right? And a lot of it is for like the camera. You know what I mean? And a lot of people will put on extra makeup for the camera because nowadays it's all about vanity. And I think where it becomes a little finicky is where people get into more surgical procedures
Yeah.
and excessive editing. Mind you, like everyone does it for their own reasons. Like I'm never one to judge someone for it, but if you're doing it to genuinely make you a little bit more confident versus altering the way that you look, to me, like a societal standard, I feel like is where it gets a little bit more in the gray area. But vanity and the way that you look nowadays is like such a big issue, especially for younger girls that I'm noticing, because you have like these people like the Kardashians who, I mean, they're not natural and that's totally okay for them, but these are people of influence, right? They have
Mm.
such power, and you have so many younger girls or even people my own age that are looking to that saying, like, now I want to get a BBL. Like when I was younger, that was not a thing. I was walking around wearing the Gap and like no makeup, at most a little bit of concealer to cover up a pimple. Nowadays, it's like you've got fake lashes, people are getting lip injections. At 16, girls
Yeah.
are getting nose jobs. Like it is so crazy, but that's kind of what our world has become to be. And I think as soon as you kind of start, you need to know where your line is. Because once you do start, it's a very slippery slope where it's a continuous thing where you're like, I always want to enhance this. I want to do this. I want to do that. But where in all of that are you learning to accept your own self beauty? I don't know
Yeah.
if I answered your
No,
question,
yeah,
but
for sure. But even like I what you just said about like editing photos and stuff, I've experienced seeing that and like
yes.
I come from a dance background, so I grew up looking at myself in the mirror, looking at dances and just the way
Hmm.
like magnifying everything. So like
Yeah.
naturally I it's not a judgy way, I'm just really aware and I see things like that. Like
Hmm.
I could just be going about my day and if I see a photo, I don't know why, I'm aware that something was changed,
For sure.
you know? So when I
It's so
see
normalized.
that, it's, yeah, unfortunately, but like I'll see that photo and I'll feel bad. You know, part of me looks at that, I'm like, so what if
You're
you're
beautiful
that?
the way that you are.
Yeah, but
Why
not
are you
even that
doing that?
extreme. Not
Yeah.
even that extreme. Like, not that saying that is extreme, but like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
look at the photo, I'm just like, just why do you have to do that? You know, I guess it's a blunt way of speaking it, but like, why do you have to do
Yeah.
that? It's
But it's
okay.
tr- it's societal standards though.
Yeah,
It is such societal standards. Like you see nowadays, and like people are really good at editing pictures, or they've just gotten a lot of work done, and a lot of it looks really natural, and it just sets false standards for so many different types of people, especially this younger generation of girls. Like one of someone that I knew, she was I think maybe like 12 years old, and she was like, "I want to get my boobs done." I'm like, "Pardon me." I'm like, "Excuse you, what are you talking about?" But it's crazy. It's a thing nowadays, but I don't know. It's sad, but I will be the first to admit, like I do edit my pictures, not excessively, but it's just to like enhance them, you know. And I think being transparent is like the biggest thing of it all. But there are people who do it and it fully looks like a face is just planted on the picture.
yeah,
It's crazy,
it's too
but
much.
it is. But a lot of it is also for the male gaze.
Even
It's a
then, it's
whole
weird because
thing.
like, why? My common sense of that is like, he's gonna see you in person. Like, what?
One day. Oh yeah, and there's been so many people that I meet and I'm like you're so much more beautiful in person than like what you portray to be in your pictures, but this is what social media is. It's like it's always the grander thing. You have to be have the biggest boobs, the smallest waist, have the craziest lifestyle, but these are all highlights. Like everything is just so inauthentic nowadays than it is genuine, and it's so sad, but that's what it's a society of what we live in, who has the nicest lifestyle, who has the prettiest face, who has the nicest clothing, like all these things, but it's like none of it matters, none of it
Yeah,
matters. Like when you pass away, no one's going to be on your deathbed be like, wow, they had a great Instagram feed and their face was really nice. Like what impact did you really live or leave, you know what I mean?
yeah. But even going back to like editing pics, it's like there's different variations of it because
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't edit my pics, but like I don't edit myself. Like I'll put when we talk about filters, I come from that creative background where like
Hmm.
you know like you know how the iPhone update has like different filters you can put on photos.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So like if I see one that I like, it changes the color, it changes the
yeah.
mood. I
Hmm.
like the aesthetic of it. You know,
Yes, yeah.
I'm editing photos in that sense where it's creating like, oh, okay, like I know I took photography in grade 12. I've taken these
Yeah.
courses. I know the third and the corner, like you know what I mean, the different fields of how to have a photo set up. You know what I mean? Like that's
Hmm.
my worlds of it. So like definitely not beauty. Like I don't really care. Like sometimes I take selfies. I'm like, oh wow, that's not it today.
Yeah.
But like I'll take a selfie 2 days later, and it's like I look the exact same. It just I was
Yeah.
feeling myself more, I guess. You know.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. But there's so many parts to it, right? Like if lighting is such a big thing,
yeah,
background, like angles, like the whole thing. But it's just like at the end of the day, it's like people are going to meet you in person one day.
Yes.
It really
And then
doesn't
that's
matter.
what comes down to personality, because like I found myself, even with me, like you obviously everyone noticed I don't have my hair anymore. I was
Hmm.
losing my hair, not a lot, but like it was to a point where like keeping it was not an option for me. It wasn't.
Right.
It was, yeah, like it looked weird, but like for me, I looked at it. I'm like, what's the point of me trying to grow it and style it?
Hmm.
Like, why am I doing that? So I just shaved
Yeah.
it, and I went, like, lucky for me, like I did that, and people were telling me like you have the head for it. You don't look like
Hmm.
a, you know what
You
I
have the
mean?
head for it.
If I
Yeah,
did it,
yeah.
obviously that doesn't matter, but if my head was bigger, I don't think I would be confident in doing that.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just did it one day. I remember FaceTiming my friend. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna buzz it. What else am I gonna do? You know, and
Yeah.
it goes back to the whole how I grew up and I look at things very particularly and just being like,
Mm.
oh, I don't like that, you know.
Yes.
And I could have
Yeah.
kept it. It's not like that. It's just like that was. I kind of went 0 to 100. I'm like, kid, shaved off. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
here I am, and It's funny because wasn't sure, but there was a part of me was just like, I think it's fine. And then now,
Yeah.
like, I remember when I had hair, I would always get a haircut and be like, oh, why can't I have, like, the same length all the time? And now, like,
Mm.
I wear hats, I take it off. I don't have to worry about my hair. I don't have to
Yeah,
worry
it's
after
easier.
washing it, go pay $60 to go get a barber to cut my hair when I'm just over my sink doing it every
Yeah.
week. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, like, I found the good side of it being like, oh, it actually worked out in a way, just not the way that I
Yeah.
wanted to, you know? Because I've been a
Yeah.
hair guy my whole life. Like growing up as a kid, I had hair down to here, wavy.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I always, I say like hockey guy hair, but not like
Oh,
that.
yes.
Mine was. I don't want to.
Mine was
It's.
nicer.
I had like luscious hair. I would say
Yes.
like that's best way to describe it. It was wavy. It was just like that look, and it
Yeah.
was thick. Like I remember going to get a haircut, and I would get my hair thinned out every 3 weeks. That's how thick it
Mm.
was.
Oh my
So
God.
like even for me, like understanding that, I was just like, oh my god, I went from doing that to like needle
It's such a
rollers, rolling my
shift.
head, trying to like thicken it up, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
I think it just got to a point. I'm just like, what am I holding on to? You know, because I'm getting
This
older and all that
idea.
stuff. So
Yeah.
I think
And
that's what I can ask you too. Like, where have you found that ease of being like, you know what? Let me just
be.
go
Or
through
let it
the
be.
scent. Let me just go through like, okay, my body's kind of changing right now. Well, let's see
Yeah.
what it is.
I don't know. Like, I feel like obviously as you get older, your metabolism changes. It may not be as good. Like, when I was younger, obviously I was a little bit skinnier. I was more petite. And I think just as I grow, I learn to love the different phases of myself, both mentally and physically, right? Like, especially like my personality, like it's forever changing. Like, the person that I am today is not who I was a week ago, the week before that, or is going to be the same person a week from now, right? And I feel like the same with physical, like you're always changing. And I
Mm.
guess with my body, my metabolism has changed. Like, I've gotten a little bit thicker as I've gotten older. But I'm like, you know what? Instead of me being insecure about it, we're going to take this and make it something better. So now I got a personal trainer. I go to the gym more, and it's like, okay, I have these like thicker thighs. And when I was younger, it was all about having that thigh gap. So stupid back then. Do we remember that phase? It was great.
No.
and and now I look at it and I'm like, wow, this really wasn't the ideal standard. Maybe it's the beauty standard now, but again, it's forever changing. I'm going to learn to love myself as I am, but how am I going to make the most of it versus just sit and be like, oh, this sucks. Like, this isn't what I was a few years ago. Right. And I think the one thing that I always tell myself, the one thing that is constant is change. And if you don't learn to adapt and pivot to life, anything and everything with yourself, your mind, your personality, your friends, family, career, love life, like literally anything, you will sink. And I
Yeah.
think for myself, like I've always had to learn to adapt to the different circumstances that kind of enter and exit my life. And I've kind of mastered it. So we're just in flow. That is the word of the year.
Yeah. Are you like into life path numbers and all that stuff?
like like angel numbers? What is life
Not
path
angel numbers,
numbers?
your life. So your life path number is like the if you calculate your birth date, it gives you a number that's like your life soul
Oh,
number. Your
yes.
soul number, sorry.
Got it. I have done it before.
Do
I
you
think
remember your
mine is,
number?
I think it's four.
Okay.
What is
Mine's 8.
four? What does
So
this mean? Tell me.
so 8 if you turn it sideways it's infinity.
Mm.
So my lesson in this life is learning about flow. So
Ah,
every conversation I've had on this podcast talks about flow, and it's just
there
like
you
I'm sitting here
go.
like I don't want to hear that ever again. but that's what I have to learn, just literally going through the flow.
Yeah. And it's
I
hard.
don't know. I don't know much about four specifically because
Mm,
I'm into the numbers and stuff, so I like look it up. I'm curious about all the other ones, but like I just focus on mine
of
for now, so I'm
course.
like trying to understand
Yeah.
myself.
You're like, I need to
Um,
learn.
yeah, I need to relax. That's what I
Yes.
need to do.
And it's so hard nowadays. I find that even in like the Western culture, like it's always go, go, go. Especially again, taking it back to social media. It's who do you need to be this type of person? Like you see these people that have their morning routines, or you see these like super successful people and this is what they do. And it's just like that's not realistic. Like they may be actually doing that, but are you actually living life? I was having this conversation with my girlfriend yesterday, and she was saying how some people that she knows in her life have such a rigid routine. Like they wake up every morning at the exact same time, go to bed at the exact same time. And I'm like, listen, kudos to you. I respect it. That's very type A personality of you. But also at the same time, like you're not living life. Like what happens if there's an exciting event that's happening for something that you genuinely love past your bedtime? Are you not going to go to it because it's throwing you off? Like you have to find that middle balance of yes, being in flow, but also still having that like routine and regimen and just finding that balance. Like I feel like you just need to find everything in moderation in society that's not taught. It's always you're either in la la land floating or you're super type A and you have to be like X, Y, and Z in order to achieve X, Y, and Z. But it's just like it's not
Yeah.
realistic. None of it is realistic. But I get you because I'm
Um,
the exact same. I'm very type A. So now having to be in this flow, it's like God kept pushing me this year. It was like surrender, surrender. And I'm like, no. And he's like, surrender. So I'm like, honestly, okay, forget it. And I just came back from Costa Rica with like a few of my girlfriends. And I'm so glad that we did the podcast when we did because the place that I was in like a few weeks ago was so different from where I'm at now because I was around such people who genuinely are in flow with their life and they're just so happy and so free spirited. I'm like, wow, like the people you surround yourself with really make such a big impact. And I came back feeling so blissful. That's the new word, at bliss, because I'm not holding on to anything. Like whatever is meant to be will be, and whatever isn't. And I think that's so beautiful. But the type A in me is just like tweaking out a little bit. But I'm like, we find ways to calm her by having at least like a morning routine.
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But even going back to the life path number I was talking about, you have your life path number and then you have the year that you're in.
Oh,
So I'm a life path 8, and the year that I'm having was it also goes in hand with the universal year. So this
okay.
year it's a year 8 for everybody, and it's a
Oh,
year 8 for me.
what does
So
this mean?
again, it's just going like they say 8 is all about completion and success, but
Hmm.
it really is just going with the flow and allowing that to prosper.
Okay.
So I was like so low from March till maybe September, just in a funk of like I couldn't
Mm,
understand what I was being given,
mm,
and I couldn't process it, and I didn't want to process it because I didn't like it
right.
and I didn't want it.
Yeah.
And then I obviously what you just said, like the person you were 3 weeks ago is different now. The person I am now, I'm just like, fuck, if only I just had this mindset like literally like 5 weeks ago. I
Yeah.
think I would have been growing. But again, the flow. You gotta accept it. You gotta do it. You
Exactly.
gotta shut up and just let it go.
Take it. Take it to the chin. But everything
Yeah.
happens for a reason. And I truly do believe in like divine timing. And like I think as time passes, you'll look back and be like, I know why I got out of that funk and I had this realization when I did. Because if it wasn't then I wouldn't have maybe been able to go through whatever it is that you might go through down the
Yeah.
line. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I think
Yeah.
it's very interesting, like kind of like what you were saying, how for like months on end, you're like, I wanted this and things weren't working out and you were getting so frustrated about it. I was in the exact same place this year. There was just so much resistance in my life where I was literally cornered so many times to just let go. And someone said an analogy to me and I will never forget it. And they were like, sometimes people are like dogs. The dogs always want whatever food is in front of them. So we'll use like chocolate as an example. Obviously, dogs can't eat chocolate because it's poisonous to them. But the dog will be,
But anyways.
yeah, but anyway, but
Anyways.
so the dog can't have the chocolate, and the owner, which in, I guess, in human comparison would be like the highest good, your God, whatever it is that you believe in, isn't allowing you to have that chocolate. And they're forcing you to sit in that sadness for that time being. Equivalent to the dog is going to be because it's going to get over it for not being able to have that chocolate because it knows what the long term effects of it are going to be and how it's not going to be good. So I was like, interesting. Maybe I'm like a dog that just really wanted the chocolate that really wasn't good for me. And God or whatever it is that I believe in or anyone believes in isn't allowing it because they know what the repercussions of it would have been down the line. And I
Yeah.
was like, ooh, I like that analogy. So whenever there's resistance and I'm like, I still want it, there's a reason you're not getting it. You push a little bit where you can,
Yeah.
right? But there's levels to it. If it's consistently a no, just take the no as it is.
I want to jump back to the beginning where you talked about your mom because I think that's really, I've known you for a while,
Hmm.
and we had conversations, so I think that definitely was a more pivotal point for you. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? What happened, and
Yeah,
that whole process?
it was a very life-changing moment when my mom got sick. My mom was my everything. Like in the family, I think majority of moms for their families is like the glue. And she was definitely the
Yeah.
glue to my family, but also my inspiration. Like so many people like I can't live without my mom and I was in the exact same place. I was, I think, 17 when she had gotten diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So for quite a few years, like because she had stage 2 earlier on. I don't remember how old I
Mm.
was. I think maybe 14, 15. She had it for a few months, but she kept it very under wraps because, like moms do, they don't want their kids to be stressed out. So she's like, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. All is well.
Yeah.
But then at 17, she had gone stage 2 or sorry, stage 4. And she fought for 2 years and she ended up passing away. So I was 19 by the time that she had passed. So I was still very, very young. And I have a younger brother who has a form of autism. So, looking at my family dynamic, my at this point my dad was really just like the provider because he was constantly working. My mom wasn't able to kind of do as much as she had
Yeah.
wanted to, especially because she was sick. Mind you, even while she was going through chemotherapy and doctors were really like, you need to stop work, she'd be like, no, I'm fine because that's what gives me my independence. So she was still Ubering into work every single day because she was committed to doing her thing. She was honestly a powerhouse. Um, but once she had passed, and up into the point of her passing, like I was a wreck towards the end. And everyone's like, you need, to go through like the ruts again. Like you're 27 now, like you have to go through a hardship to like find yourself. I'm like, I have found myself. I'm like, when I had lost my mom, I'm like, I have experienced the darkest and the most painful of pains. I will never let myself go back to that. Obviously, I'm always evolving as a person, but the pain and like the abandonment that I had felt is just something so unbearable. And while all of that was happening, like I also, like I was fairly young, like 19, you're still a baby, right? Like not a lot of people have really gone through that many like traumatic experiences at that point.
Yeah.
So a lot of my friends and, people in my life weren't able to kind of be there for me because they didn't really understand how or what that meant. So not only was I like, okay, I'm about to have to grieve my mom, but then I'm also like, okay, I'm about to have to step into a mother role for my younger brother. And then on top of it, I'm losing a lot of my friends. So in every aspect of my life, it was just in shambles. And I felt so alone and so
Mm.
confused, but I still wanted to put on a face for my mom because while she was sick, like I didn't want to be seeing her every single time bawling my eyes out. So I put on the best possible poker face and also to the world that I was fine and you would have never known it. And during that time, up until my mom had passed, I think maybe a week before she had passed, like I was in a depressive state. Like I was suicidal. And almost every single day I would
Yeah.
wake up and be like, I don't want to be here anymore. But the only thing that kept me pushing was my younger brother. And truly, I can say this, like I would not be here if it wasn't for him because I was just spiraling. But like
Mm.
no one would have ever known. And because I put on such a great face, everyone's like, "Oh my God, she's fine." Like she's not fine, fine, but like she's fine enough where we don't have to be kind of all hands on deck. And I think I realized like with time that was an issue because I wouldn't really reach out for help because I was like,
Mm.
"Oh no, like I'm so independent." But it's like obviously when you're going through such a traumatic experience, you need people to step forward for you, but a lot of people also wouldn't because they didn't know how. Once my mom had passed, my whole life completely changed and it was difficult because I didn't really have an option. I had no option
Yeah.
but to play the co-parent role, but to play the mother role, the big sister role, the not wife to my father, but like the companion, I guess, to some degree. And I became Olivia who was filled with roles versus Olivia and who I am as a person. And I'm only now coming to realize that I'm like, throughout all these years from 19 years old when she had passed up until 27, I was Olivia, but I was always role playing. I was never just being
Yeah.
me. I was always doing something. And I was like, how sad of a life is that I wasn't able to actually just be free? I never really got to have my younger years of like being chaotic and silly. Not that I would do that because I'm not, but I was never able to fully explore.
Like have the
It
option.
was never an option. It was never an option. And I
Yeah.
felt like I never really related to people my age because I was 19 years old playing the role of a mother, right? Especially like not just any mom, like with my younger brother being autistic, like it was a different type of motherhood that I almost kind of had to step into. And it was very interesting and complicated because I still am not his mom, so I have to kind of go back and forth of playing the two. But prior to my mom passing, she planted so many seeds of the ways in which I can kind of step up to that. But, prior to her passing, I'll never forget this. The day before she had actually passed away, at this point, she wasn't coherent because the cancer had gotten to her brain. And I sat with her in the bed and I told my older brother to leave the room because I just wanted a moment with her. And I held her hand and I was like, I need you to let go. I know that you're holding on. It has been 2 years. You were given 6 months. I'm like, I need you to let go because I'm going to step up and everything is going to be okay. I don't want you to worry about dad. I don't want you to worry about Peter, my older brother, or my younger brother, Daniel. I will do my part and I will find happiness throughout all of it. Just, it is okay. And then a few hours later, she had passed away. So it was.
Oh my god, you're making me cry. Stop it.
I'm
Holy
sorry,
shit.
but
Oh my god. No, don't be sorry.
yeah,
It's not my life. Oh my
yeah,
god.
but like, and prior to that, like she would have so many moving conversations with me because she knew I was like the one that would feel my emotions. I feel like women in general, they kind of feel more of their emotions. Men are kind of taught like be the tough guy, but it's also not realistic, right? Like my older brother is more of the guy that like puts on the poker face no matter what, but internally he may be sad or angry, but like you won't really see it. Same with my dad, because they're told you have to be the provider, and provider
Yeah.
mentality doesn't really equal being emotional or dealing with your internal emotions. And not like in a bad or like excessive way by any means, but like being a woman who's, I guess, more in tune and like is going to take an understanding to this situation and like absorb it and make the most of it was very important, I guess, for my family dynamic, especially for my younger
Yeah.
brother and for me to evolve into the woman that my mom kind of like planted seeds for me to become. So, I mean, it was a very, very big catalyst moment in my life. And as much as I still sit here and question, like, why did this happen? I think everything happens for a reason. And I know that that almost pushed me a little bit more so towards my soul's purpose and also hers. Like, I feel like she almost like lives through me in some ways because I channel her. And it's to help and inspire people and not necessarily to change lives. I mean, if I can, that'd be great. But just to bring positivity to people. And I think I would say I'm doing it. And like being able to get on this podcast and kind of share a little bit about my story is another outlet of me being able to do that. So it's
Yeah.
been a complicated and very non-linear journey. And I think grief never is that. And it's just having to accept that, even though you may have really beautiful days like Christmas and my wedding one day and all these things, like it's just going to be as equally painful. But being able to say, like, I know that she's there in spirit is my way of kind of like coping with all of that.
That's so interesting
Mm-hmm.
because it's I guess we can get into that too because you have this ability to connect and channel. What was the beginning of that? Was it with your mom or was
When
this
I was
like
younger.
how like what where what are you eating that gives you this?
So, I mean, honestly, like, I feel like everyone has the capability. You just have to kind of like step
Absolutely.
into it.
But it's more prominent with you,
Yes, I would say,
I
because
would
I
say.
do step into it for sure. And I think you need to have more of like openness to it. But
Mm.
yes, some people I guess you could say more like, I don't want to use the word gifted, but like are more clairvoyant.
Well, it is. It's
It is a
it's a
gift, yeah, and
gift.
it is beautiful, but it can also be very scary all at the same time. But
Yes.
when I was actually younger, my mom, this is the very first story that my mom had told me because my mom was very spiritual too. So I actually had a younger sister and she passed away when I was 7 years old. So I've been going through like trauma since I was a little baby. Um, but it's okay. We've made the most of it as I sit here and laugh. I find humor in my heart. That's my way of coping. Once my little sister had passed away, so I was 7 years old and she was only a few months. And crazy story, she had actually passed away right beside me. And for the longest time, obviously I was younger. Every girl wants a younger sister. I was bawling my eyes out for like months on end, being like, why did this happen? I wanted her to be in my life. Like I wanted to like help raise her. I wanted a best friend, all of this stuff. Obviously that was so hard for my mom, and kind of similar to how I stepped into my spirituality more when she had passed away. She stepped into her spirituality when my younger sister had passed
First.
away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my very first story that I'm aware of is when I was in my bedroom one day and I was talking to the air. And my mom kind of like walked by and she was like, oh, she's just doing what little kids do and talk to themselves. But then she's like, who is she talking to? So she listened in, and I was talking to my little sister. And at this point, she had passed away. I was having a conversation, I don't know, for maybe like 10, 15 minutes, just like full blown playing with my little sister who was no longer here. And my mom opened the door and she's like, Olivia, like, who are you talking to? And I pointed to the air and I was like, Jacqueline. And she was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, Jacqueline, she's right here. I'm playing with her. And she was just like, I don't know what's going on. She's like, okay, noted. I'm taking a step out. And then when I was younger, like I would tell people these stories and they're like, you're insane. I would not sleep in my bed by myself until I was like maybe 15 years old. Like I was petrified of the darkness because of the things that I would see and channel. Because when you're so young, you're so open to being able to connect with anything and everything. And I guess because I had been so pure, obviously, yes, I would sometimes see good things, but I actually saw a lot more of the bad spirits or darker spirits when I was younger. So I was always scared. But I had one spirit that was a really, really bad one, and it latched onto me for years and years and years. And I was petrified of the darkness because every single time it was dark, I would see this woman appear. And I would literally feel her, and she would reach out towards me. And it was something literally out of like a horror movie. But
Yeah.
up until I guess like my mom got really, really sick is when I kind of tried to step into it more and learned more about how you have to be able to kind of control it. Because like anything in life, there's always
Say
light
no.
and dark. Exactly. And
Yeah.
especially when it comes to spirituality. And if you don't have some sort of like control on it, it can become very, very scary and very dark. I've been experiencing it basically my whole entire life, but I really got a grip on it maybe when I was around like 19 years old. So closer to when my mom had passed away. But there would be like so many crazy stories of things like you wouldn't be able to explain. So there was this one time when my mom was going in for an MRI and she closed her eyes and she envisioned a girl sitting in a sunflower field, and she was in a white dress and she looked like me with dark hair, and she was just looking off looking at our house, and she had a painting of this. And there was one day I was walking by, which is now my younger brother's room, but that had been her room at the time. And I walked by and I saw a little girl sitting there in a white dress staring at me, and she looked like me. And I literally walked by and I jumped. And then I took a step back and I looked and I was like, am I seeing things? And she looked at me and smiled. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? And I ran because I got scared. Years later down the line, because I never spoke of that story, because a lot of times I was like, okay, I'll just pretend like it never happened. When my mom was telling her story of how when she was going in for the MRI and she closed her eyes, she started describing it. And I was like, wait, before you do, I'm like, there was a time that I was walking by my younger brother's room and I saw someone similar. Was she wearing a white dress? And my mom started bawling her eyes and she was like, yes. And I was like, I think that was Jacqueline. So it was interesting down the line how we were able to kind of like piece things together. But even though it was really scary at times, once you kind of get like a better understanding of it, it's truly a gift to be able to channel people to help others here on earth, to give them some sort of like closure or ease.
I want to ask you because I texted you like a few months ago with that whole situation, and like I want to get your perspective on it, because when I texted you with that whole scenario, was it something that you're just like, hey, you should do A, B, C, and D? Or like when I texted you, you started receiving stuff? Like, how does that
Remind me
work?
of what it was, because I feel like whenever I do any sort of channeling, the memory of it literally like gets ripped from my brain.
I felt like a dark thing, and I would literally
Ah,
text you, and I was just like, I feel something. I don't know what to do with it. And it
Yeah.
was so weird that I don't know why, like, my first thought was to text you. To be honest, we haven't talked in so long, and it was, I don't care about that stuff, like
Yeah, yeah.
messaging people randomly, but it was just my instinct to be, like, literally the first thing I thought about was Olivia. I
Oh,
don't know why.
wow.
And then I just texted you, and I was like, hey, can you help me?
What did I even say? I don't even remember what I said.
You just told me, like, light some sage, ask the whatever it was to just leave if it wasn't
Yeah.
welcomed, and all that
And did it
stuff.
work? Kind of.
It We can talk about it
Okay.
because I realized that it was because so back in the day when my dog passed away, we had a dog whisperer. So
Mm.
we talked to her.
Okay.
Actually, this is when I started hanging out with you and both of our exes.
Yeah.
Where we went out one night, and I'll talk about it. But
Yeah, yeah.
it was during that time where, like, we were sitting down, and then the lady on the phone told my mom, "There's a little girl that says she's doing okay and stuff," and I'm just like we're crying because, like, our dog passed away. She's saying all
Hmm.
these nice things,
Hmm.
and then she says that, and I was like, "Little girl," and
Hmm.
my mom's like crying. She looks at us. She's like, "Yeah, I had a miscarriage." I'm like, 20 years later,
I
and
do
you're telling
remember
me no.
this. Yeah, yeah.
So it was my sister. The energy was so dark.
Mm.
Like, I was scared. I was just like, I can't, like, I'm not kidding. For a week and a half, I had my LED lights on,
No
or
way.
even like the lights over there, just going to bed. Like, I couldn't. It
Wow.
was so, yeah, it was so strong, and I couldn't find the power in me to be like, no.
Yeah.
And that was my lesson with that,
Mm.
actually, because I remember, I did the sage and stuff, and then I still felt it.
Yeah.
So I also go to a Reiki girl, and she's like, sometimes souls need latch onto you because they need help going to
Yeah.
source. And I just said, oh, so I don't, I there's no right or wrong way of doing it, obviously, but
Yeah.
I just started figuring that out, and then I haven't felt it since.
Mm.
Like, I was just saying, like, go to the light, go to source,
Yeah.
like, helping her get
Got,
there.
yeah.
So that experience, I was just like, wait, I don't know how I feel about this.
It's crazy, but I think there are ways you can kind of like turn it off if you don't want to tap into it. And I think it's just a matter of saying, like, you're not welcomed. I am not channeling. I am not doing this. Like, being really, really stern and not letting your eyes or your mind wander. Like, you really need to snap back into reality. But if you have this gift and you want to tap into it, I think it's such a beautiful thing, but it can become very scary, kind of like you had just said. I had an experience not too long ago with one of my friends, and like he would tap more into like the darker side of it. Not that he was a dark person by any means, but he had a curiosity.
Yes, yeah, that's what it is. It's the
Yes.
curiosity.
And I was just like, I don't want curiosity because that curiosity is such a slippery slope. And I used to hang out with him when he was always like learning more about it. But I was intrigued. I was like, oh my God, this is so interesting. This is crazy. We
It's,
were,
sorry to cut you off.
mm,
It's hard because you have to have that internal knowledge of
yeah.
controlling it. If you don't, then you open yourself up to anything.
Hmm.
That's why
Hmm.
you're saying curiosity is, like,
It,
not the best, which
curiosity
is
will
fine,
kill
but,
the
like, you have
cat.
to get there.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And at the time, we were at his cottage, and I just felt, I don't even know how to explain it. I just felt like weary. Like I felt stuff constantly around me, and I felt like there were eyes on me, but not pure eyes. And we were on this boat, and he was telling me about Salem and like the witchcraft that used to happen there. And like I like hearing about history, so he was going on about it. And I was like, this is so cool. Tell me
Cool.
more.
Yeah.
And as he would talk about it, there was a fly that kept flying just over his head and going in a circle. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then I was like, okay, whatever, ignore it. So the fly went away. And then we kept talking about it and talking about it. And I was like, if there is a dark entity here, show
Get it
me
rid of it.
something. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
wanted. See, this is where I was so stupid. I was
Get
curious.
rid of it.
I'm like, let me see it.
Yeah.
I was like, show me something. And this fly came back, and it kept hitting him in the face, and it kept going in circles over his head. I was like, oh no, now I'm uncomfy. We need to wrap this up. So I changed the topic of conversation. And then we stopped somewhere like in the middle of the forest because we were going to like adventure. And at this point, it was starting to get a little bit dark. So the mood was just set. We were sitting there, and I look at him, and I was like, do you feel something? And he was like, yes. And I'm like, there's something here. And I started to channel. And there was a young boy that always used to come here with all his friends. And he had committed suicide. And he had not crossed over. So I started channeling him. I'm like, are you okay? Like, why did you not cross over? This, and that. And he was like, she told me to. She told me to hurt myself. And I was like, this is something out of a horror movie. So I'm like, who is she? Who is this person?
Yeah.
And then I saw this woman, and my friend saw it too. And like, when I kid you not, both of us screamed because we were both like, like it was just so overwhelming with how scary this woman looked. Like literally something out of Insidious. Like you can't even make this stuff up. And we both saw it. We both described.
Also, that's why I don't watch horror movies,
Yeah,
because
no,
I
no,
can picture things quickly, so I wouldn't want that.
we don't do that. We learned at a young age.
Yeah.
And basically like this woman was just like, yeah, like I pushed him to do it. So then I was like, hey, you crazy woman, you go back in your corner from hell wherever you came from. And then I was
Yeah.
talking to this young boy, and I basically helped him cross over because he was like, I don't know how, I don't know what to do. And while we were there, I was like, show me a sign that you're crossing over. So a was it a butterfly? No, it was a dragonfly that came, and it landed right near me. And I was like, to show me that you were crossing over, I want you to go across me and then fly off. And I kid you not, as I said that, I closed my eyes. I was like, okay, we're going to walk into the light now. And the dragonfly flew up and then went over. And I was like, it's like something out of a movie, but it can get really scary, like very, very scary. So for the longest time after that, like I stopped channeling because I got rubbed the wrong way so much that I was just like, I need love and light. I need God. I don't know what
Yeah.
that was. But it's
Did you ask him how
interesting.
long he was,
Therefore,
yeah, stuck there?
years. I don't remember the exact,
Just it felt like a long time.
a
Like,
very long time. Yeah, like years on
interesting.
it. And he was just like, I didn't know what to do. I was stuck, and I'm like, but like it's like you tell these stories to some people, and they're like, what the hell are you saying? Like people are gonna listen to this episode, they're gonna be like, wow, two crazy delusional people. We love it. But it's like those that
Well,
believe in it, they're like, this is legitimate.
yeah. It's hard for me to wrap my head around in a sense
Hmm.
because it doesn't. When I experienced those things, A plus B was not equaling
That's
C.
it. Yeah.
And it's like getting rid of that mindset of trying to like find the equation. That's scary because it's not comfort. Obviously, it's not in your realm, but it's
Hmm.
also like something that just your mind and brain can't,
Understand. Yeah.
yeah, they can't be mutual with, which was very hard because like even what you said about like saying not today, like I remember like I go on walks with my dog, and
Hmm.
I live like on a crescent, so when I went on the other side, there's a backyard with a fence, and the fence was open, and one day I felt like someone was there
Hmm.
and they were walking with me, and then I got scared. So I'm like, I don't want to feel this. And then like anytime I walked there, I felt that. And then one day, I'm not kidding. Like it's obviously how we speak to them or whatever is in our head. But I remember walking and I felt them. I literally went, not today.
Yeah.
And then it, you know what I mean?
You're
Like
done.
it was. I pictured it like a movie, how it just
Yeah.
disappeared. But it happened, and I went, okay, like there's control here.
Yeah.
There's something. But
Yeah.
it's just experiencing it that's like,
It's you can't
what?
explain it. And like everybody sees it differently. Like some people only hear it, some people legitimately see it, some people just feel it. It depends like how connected you kind of are. But that's why like a lot of kids and animals are able to connect more because they don't have those biases and those like
Barriers.
barriers that are just like one
Yeah.
plus one isn't equaling two here, therefore it can't be a thing. Like you're instilled so many things that oh you're seeing stuff or like you're getting nervous because of whatever reason. This scientifically doesn't make sense, but there are some things you cannot explain. So it's like even if you may not fully believe in spirits, there is some sort of higher power I truly believe in that
Yeah.
is orchestrating something. So
What
yeah.
I have a hard time explaining, not that people really ask me, but like if I wanted to really get them to understand, how would you explain seeing something?
Mm,
If you're trying to give them someone a visualization of how you perceive seeing something so they
yeah.
can understand, like what's your best,
Way of
I don't want
doing
to say
it.
analogy or just,
I don't know, like
I've tried a few times trying to say it, but then I'm like, I don't think that's right to
yeah.
really pinpoint how you see it, you
It's
know?
hard because everyone's different. So, like for myself, I see very clearly sometimes, and other times I don't. If I'm closing my eyes and I'm channeling, I have almost like a daydream. That's my best way of explaining it. Like, you know how like you'll create like fake scenarios in your head where you're like, I'm
Yeah.
fighting with this person, we're saying blah blah blah, whatever. It's like that, but I will oftentimes envision this person behind like a white light. Or if I like see it um as I'm like kind of roaming through life, mind you, I've been able to kind of turn that off, but if I do open myself up to being able to channel, I will literally see it in front of me,
Mm.
which is like the craziest thing ever. But
So that's what my question
yeah,
is. When you say see it in front of you, like what's
what does it
like
look
like
like?
like let's just say you light a candle and the smoke goes and you see and you're looking at a window and you see the sunlight coming in. You see behind the smoke, but you see the smoke as well. But it's like a clear film. Is that like how
Mm.
you see it?
I see it like it's a full blown person. Like
Like
I
you can
see it
touch them?
very, yeah, like crisp. Or I see it as a shadow. I know it's crazy, but everybody's different, right? Like some people can only like hear it. And like especially when they're speaking to me, first and
This is my
foremost,
brain trying to do 1 + 1 = 2.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're like
You know
this
what I mean?
doesn't
Like
make sense.
finding a way to explain it in a way that's a little bit more tangible and like okay, that could make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So that's why I said the smoke thing because like you don't. It's not like you just see
fully.
smoke and there's nothing behind. Like
Yes.
you see like a filter on it, kind of.
Yeah.
You know?
First, like usually when I do channel, I feel energy. So you
Yeah.
know how sometimes when you walk into a room, you're like, people are weird. They're giving me evil eye. Like your body just changes. Like your alerts go up. That's what it'll normally be for me. And then I start scanning the room, and I'll literally look around until I see a shadow or I will see a ghost or like a spirit, whatever it is that you want to call it. And I don't know how to explain it other than the fact that it's almost like equivalent to me talking to you. Like if I were to channel right now, I could be like, oh, like I see someone like in the corner of my room,
Mm.
or I'll see like a face, or I'll see a full body. Now I got chills.
It's cool, but it's also like again like just
It's freaky, but it
doing your
doesn't make
makeup and
sense. Yeah, just another day, like, oh, Bob's here again.
yeah. Oh my god, I know.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
but it's like people will have fun with it. But like, Olivia, let's take you to a haunted house. I'm like, no, 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 because I'm gonna get scared, and then I'm gonna scare the living shit out of you. Like, I just came back from Costa Rica, and like, spirituality is very heavily practiced there, but it's also, again, any,
Witchcrafty a little bit.
yeah. I mean, anywhere that you're practicing anything, like even like with religion, you have the extremists of it that are really, really holy. Then you're like, you say you are, but we're doing some questionable things. Same with
Mm.
spirituality. It's like you can be spiritual, but doesn't mean you're good. A lot of people will dibble dabble into the bad because they know the power of spirituality. Not everyone is pure intended. So when we had gone there, like there were so many signs, whether it being like the insects that would come around, like wherever we were staying, the birds, the sounds that they were making, like if I tapped into channeling there, I would have not slept at all. But the signs were so, so
Strong.
loud that I was just like, I can't. And thank God I was with like a bunch of girls that have such positive, uplifting energy. And I was telling one of my girlfriends who's like very into this, and I think it was like early in the morning too, and I was like, there are bad spirits trying to like come into our
Our
space.
space. Mm.
Yes, but because we radiate such positivity, they won't come through. And because I'm not channeling it, I'm not giving them a link in. But they're trying, whether it being
Mm.
like I don't even, I need to send you this video after this podcast. The sound that these birds were making, normally I love the sound of birds. It was almost like a cry and a
Eerie.
scream. Oh, like I don't even, yes, very. And I'm just like, right when we got there, I was like, fuck, this is going to be an interesting trip, and I can either make it really good by turning it off, or I channel through and it's just going to become a very scary, scary place. And it's crazy because where we were staying, at the bottom of the hill, there was like a spiritual retreat area, and
Mm.
they did like Reiki and stuff. And I was like, oh, part of me wishes I went in just to see what like the vibe was,
What's going
but
on? Yeah.
I'm like, oh, conveniently at the bottom of the mountain where we were staying, and we were right at the top, there's like a place for spirituality. So I'm like, I don't know about that, but it's very interesting. But if you don't get a grip on it, it can become very scary very quickly.
What was the? Because there are different occults, right? What was? Do you remember knowing what certain occult was in that area?
Ooh,
Specific. I know you said witchcraft, but like what? You know,
what it
there's
was
different
specifically, I don't
tangents
know.
and all that stuff.
Like, I just feel like it doesn't even need to be like per se a cult. Like, I feel like it's just people practicing dark magic. without even sometimes even realizing that you're practicing dark magic. Like a lot of people, I've even had like friends that will say this. They'll be like, I wish this person harm. Like karma's gonna get them. Like I can't wait till it gets them. Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, you're kind of putting out some dark energy there. I'm like, and in a way, that's a form of like dark magic because I do believe that like putting things out in the universe, it will oftentimes circle back around.
Yeah.
So I don't know if what the name of it was per se. I didn't want to look like I do, but I didn't. I might do that this evening actually, since I'm curious, since we're having this conversation. I mean,
Yeah.
like what's roaming in that area? But it could just be like normal people in their household that practice spirituality the same way that people practice religion, but it may not just be for the good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have a question because with this, I don't know if like you're into what's happening in the States with all the celebrities and that whole world.
Oh,
Like, are you,
I kind of know. I don't get myself too deep into it, but that's the
you
question.
know Sloan Bella?
The
Have you heard
name
of
the
her?
name rings a bell.
She's a psychic medium. She's in the States. She has like short blonde hair.
Hmm.
A lot of people have been posting here saying that she channeled what was happening with like Diddy and
Ah,
them, and that it came true. So like everyone's like reposting her videos that she was doing.
okay.
I wanted to ask you what's your. I know everyone has their opinions. I'm believing there's something there. I can't see it or feel it, obviously, but like when you hear stuff like that, like what's your brain getting at when you hear it and see it?
Like when you like predict like certain
No,
outcomes.
like just like what's happening. Like they saying like Hollywood's very occult,
Oh, it
dark,
is. Oh
satanic.
my God,
That's what I'm
yeah.
saying. Like when you are, you I know you're probably in that world, but like what's your experience with like learning about it? And like,
Oh.
do you have you like I don't know your world. Like, do you like sit there and like channel that energy and
Ah.
understand, or is like that not even part of your
I mean, so how
gift?
I,
I would say.
yeah, like how I practice spirituality is very interesting. I feel like any practicing anything and just that can be a little bit of a slippery slope. So how I do it is I'll incorporate spirituality, I'll incorporate religion, and also psychology. Because like you, I'm very type A, and one plus one needs to equal two. So I can't take out that part of me because I feel like psychology is very much
I feel like you want to translate to people.
yes, that's exactly what it is. But it's incorporated into it because I do think it
Mm,
does take a play in kind of like who we are as people, right? Because our
yeah,
brain is a part of it. Psychology and the science part is more robotic. Spirituality is very floaty because there's no boundaries. Whereas religion, it's much more rigid, right? Because you're not going to be enlightened if you don't follow the Ten Commandments, or there's always some sort of rule book, right?
yeah,
And I think being any of them, being too robotic, completely floating, or being rigid doesn't isn't serving anybody. And people oftentimes step into one of the two because they like to compartmentalize, whereas I think it's important to incorporate all. So I think for myself, when I look at that situation of kind of what's happening with the celebrities, I don't need to channel in because I already know that it's a dark place. And then I look at it from
yeah,
a psychological or like basic science, not even science, just like human behavior standpoint. LA and everything that's happening with all those celebrities like is so calculated. Like it's such a facade and it's all about social status and growing the ladder. And when people want to become the top of the top, you give out parts of yourself in order to achieve it. Like a lot of people who are very successful or have a lot of money, they're very cold hearted. If you have a lot of conversations with these people and you're like, what the fuck? Like, there was someone that I had talked to not too long ago, very, very successful, came from a very rich family. And we were talking about my mom passing. And this woman looked at me and she was like, do you visit her at the cemetery? And I was like, oh, yeah, I do. And she's like, why do you do that? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, what's the
what are you
point?
asking?
Yeah, she's like, what's the point of going to where like your mom's dead body is? And I'm like, are you okay? And I'm like, there's a coldness I find that with very, very successful people that they almost have to put on because it's a little bit of a facade. You're in a bubble, right? And the rest of the world is just, it's your world. Everyone else is living in it. And it's all about
Yeah,
authority, it's all about control, and it's a very, very scary place. So if LA is filled with all of that, that's why you see such extremes. You have the rich of the rich and the poorest of the poor there. It's because they have that control. And you don't gain that control by being a good person. Let's call a spade a spade.
yeah,
Like, unfortunately,
yeah,
nowadays, like, you have to be not slimy, but like, there are ways to grow in that ladder because unfortunately
It goes back to the religion part, making their own religion. You have to follow the rules, and if you don't, then you don't get what you get.
exactly.
That's basically what it is.
Exactly. So I think
So
there is such dark entity over there. That's why I'm like, I would never even care to go to LA just to see it. And people are like, do you want to live there? I'm like, not a chance in hell. Like, I would never. Like, I already know that's just somewhere I wouldn't fit in because I read through it. I read through it and I
yeah,
can feel the energy in the room. So, but like this, the cream always rises to the top in any and every single situation, whether there's justice in the end. I don't know whether it being people that go into jail or they get their karma in whatever crazy way that they do. I think it will get served at some point in a certain way, but it may not be the way that certain people may want it. Like if it's all these people going to jail, like I don't foresee that being a thing. Like these people have so much power. People know people's families. Like I'm not going to handcuff someone if someone's going to threaten to kill my entire family. Like let's be so real here. So I
yeah,
don't know what it will look like, but I think that there definitely will be some sort of blow up, or people will do their best to keep everything under wraps. And I think social media is a really big outlet of being able to see all of the crazy things that are happening in the world because there's so many bad things, and it's all so dark. But it's like, but what are we actually doing about it, right? And I
yeah,
think this is almost the era of like where people really have to get a little bit rowdy to get the point across because unfortunately being calm and just stating your opinion won't necessarily get you there. There has to be enough
yeah,
pushback and not want to say rioting, but like enough of a shake for something to happen. Unfortunately, we as people only really kind of click in when shit goes south. That's why people are always like, oh, you only really realize what you had until you lose it. You need to see the extremities of different situations in order for you to want to action it. For myself, I will never go back into a dark place because I know what it's like being there. So I'm going to do everything in my power to just be in flow and achieve that like blissful happiness. And I think like even when like people end, for example, everyone says like when you're out of a relationship, people will only realize what they had when they lost it. It's genuinely a thing. And unless you've been through certain
yeah,
hardships in life and you already understand that concept, you're not going to get shaken enough to want there to be change.
yeah.
I went on a whole tangent.
Um, no, that's great. I'm gonna keep saying Sloan because like I watch her all the time. She does like lives on
hmm
YouTube, and I just sit
Oh,
there and
cool.
listen. But she talks a lot about how a lot of the souls are like hijacked and taken over. Like, is
Mm,
that something that you're aware of or like know to be, and like have you experienced that with people around
hi.
you, where you're like, oh, because I know there's a difference between vibrating at a certain
Yes.
energy versus like being taken over by energy.
Yeah.
I've never really been in contact with anyone who like can say that. So like I think you're the closest
Yeah.
thing. Give,
I feel
give me
like
that.
I wouldn't say per se fully taken over, but latching onto and almost be kind of coming one with. And like
Kind of like hand on the shoulder, being like, "Go this
yeah,
way, go that way,"
pretty
kind
much
of.
something like that. And there were maybe there's like some people I've met and I've encountered, and I don't know how to explain it. It's all through their eyes, and you know how people always like the eyes are like the soul or the window to your soul. And I know that's like
Mm,
sounds so crazy. And when I was younger, I'm like I don't even know what that means. But truly, when you look at someone's eyes, you can see like whether there's purity or whether there's true darkness. And there's a few people that I have met in my life, and like even thinking about it gives me chills. There's just emptiness. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on in your brain? Like, why am
is
I?
it specific in the eye? Like what?
I don't know how to
I'm trying to
explain it.
understand.
It's just like you look at them and it's hollow. It's
Do you
absolutely
think
hollow.
it goes it coexists with you just feeling the hollowness, or is like you see that
Mm,
first and then it
no,
translates to hollowness? You know what I mean? Or it's just like you
you see
straight
it right
away.
away. You see it right away. And I think like a lot of people who aren't even tapped in can see it. And there's been
Mm,
circumstances where I'm like, oh my God, this person's like good, it's fine. And then I've had someone else be like, look at their eyes, Olivia. And they are not spiritually connected anyway. They're like, their eyes are empty. There is nothing beyond
mm.
behind that. And I'm trying to think of like a celebrity or someone that I can like use it as an example. Like I've had a few people in my life that literally just have like emptiness past their eyes, or they're just like icy.
But not in a. When you say emptiness, does it always translate to like a negative
Oh
thing, or
yeah,
just
yeah.
like they
A darkness.
always negative?
A darkness.
Darkness in choosing to be dark, or like that they're just at that stump, or is it literally
Mm.
just their soul? You know what I
Yes.
mean?
So, okay, so it's not people going through heartache because there's still a difference where it's like maybe someone did something bad, but that's not defining of them. There are people who are literally
Oh,
just bad people.
definitively
And like,
bad.
I don't even know how to
Mm.
explain it. Like, I've had so many, that's why I'm not so many, not gonna lie. I don't want any more. But I've had a few
Yeah.
experiences with some people, and just the way that they move is just so manipulative and so cold and so calculated and so in their benefit. And it's just like, what made you like this? And then I will sit there and try and understand it because again, the one plus one needs to equals two in my head. And there is no explanation. Like, yes, there are some things like people were brought up in certain environments and whatnot, but who's an example? Who's the serial killer that had blue eyes? Was it Ted Bundy? I don't know. I don't know. There was one serial killer, and I watched the documentary, and there's literally a picture, and they talk about his eyes and how they're so like glazed.
Jeffrey?
Maybe it's Jeffrey. I don't
Yeah.
know. One of them, but it's like their eyes are just glazed over. Like there's no warmth to them.
Like they're drunk, kind of, and they're just. Is that like a comparison to say?
I
Like
guess.
physically looking at the eyes? Or is it. I'm literally just trying to pick out
Yeah.
an example so people can understand, but I guess it's really
Like
just annoying.
I guess, yeah, like there was this one example, and this is a crazy one. And one of like my brother's friends was talking to some girl, and she legitimately practices like satanic rituals. No,
Darkness.
no, like satanic rituals. Like she has shit tattooed on her. I'm like, okay. Anyway, so
For what reason?
I don't know. I was curious, but I'm like, I don't want to be that curious. Like, I don't want to know what got you to this place.
Hmm.
And I had seen her, and again, I feel like I radiate a little bit more like positivity and happiness. I'm always smiling. And we were in this club, and I'm like scanning the room because I felt eyes on me. And she was looking at me, and I kid you not, was staring into my soul. And her eyes like slowly started to squint more and more, and I'm literally like, what the fuck is that? And I knew like that she did do this like dark magic behind closed doors. Mind you, I've never talked to this girl before. I just heard through the grapevine, and she was staring through my soul. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? So then I started getting uncomfortable, and I was like, no, bitch. I'm like, I'm not going to let you win this stare off because you're the demon. I'm like, fuck that. So I stared back at her until she looked away. And then she just looked at me and smiled and then turned away. And I was like, what the fuck was that? And it was a
Ah.
stare down for maybe like 2 minutes. I'm not even being dramatic. 2 minutes sounds short, but it was a long 2 minutes. And there was like a glazeness over her eyes, but it was just sheer darkness. And I'm like, are you okay? Like, do you need a hug?
So, sorry to cut you off. You don't. When you experience stuff like that, I'm gonna say your spirit
Yeah.
or whatever doesn't get to the end of what's happening. It's still trying to figure out what's going on. Like you don't quickly be like, oh, she's like you felt something weird, but you weren't able to pinpoint exactly what she was doing. You
No.
just felt it.
Yes. I felt it. And I was
Okay.
just like, I know you have dark energy. And I feel like for me anyway, I'm, I will not back down to that energy. And I don't need to do it in an aggressive way. It's just like, if we're going to do a stare off, I will stare at you until you look away so that you know that like my light is more powerful than whatever darkness you bring to the table. And I've had a lot of circumstances where there will be people who will be like, she's a really, really bad person or she's not good because I will not back down to their darkness or succumb to it.
Have you ever come to a conclusion right away what's going on
No,
specifically?
no, no.
Okay.
And like, I don't even need to know what it is. I feel like
Okay.
for me, it's driven from a place of wanting to control,
Hmm.
like on their end
Oh,
of wanting
got
to
it.
control, overpower, assert authority, whatever it may be. And I'm just like,
Oh, you
let's
don't need
not,
to do that. Yeah.
let's not do that here. I don't want to do that.
Do you
So
wish you can channel it that way where it's like, I feel something, oh, it's this?
I think it depends on the circumstance. Like if it's a conversation, I can pick it up more. But if it's just a matter of like making contact, to me, it's just asserting authority
Mm.
and asserting control.
Energetically.
Yes,
Okay.
energetically.
Yeah.
Energetically. That
Not
it's like
like,
I'm above
bitch.
you. Yes, no, no, not like not physical, but energetically and through their eyes.
Square
Like
up.
yeah, no, literally. And I've had so many experiences where people literally be like, oh, like when you look this person in the eyes, like it's just ice cold. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And then I would, whatever, I was having a conversation, this person was staring at me, and I was like, holy fuck, like it's ice. their eyes are literally ice. And I was like, I'm not backing down to you because like I don't know what you're gonna put what energy you're putting on me. And then the end of it, they're like, I don't like her. So I was like, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's all energy based, and I feel like people that aren't even, I mean, unless you're a person who's like completely floating, if you are in tune to some degree of being able to pick up like energy or vibes, even not even like energy per se, or like the spiritual realm, you can still tell like which people are, I guess, leaning more so towards the light end, neutrality, or like dark,
Mm.
in my opinion. Like, have you ever had those encounters where you meet someone, you're like, ooh, I don't know what's going on there. Like, you seem like something happened to you, but there's just a heaviness.
Honestly, I don't know how to explain it, but I'll feel things,
Hmm.
and I can't tell if my brain's lying to myself or I'm just trying to see the best out of people. But I think more so now, learning about myself, I think I'm able to pick up people's energies, but not involving me,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
No,
Like
that's so important.
that that was hard though because I got to a point where I would feel these things and I would
Mhm.
try to not mask it. I would get to a point where I'm trying to figure out, okay, no, it's probably me. I gotta maybe switch that. It's not that. But
Yeah.
it's like realizing that people are going through different things and like feeling that there's something there,
Yes.
and like not taking offense
Not
to it. Or,
internalizing it.
yeah. But I naturally do that because that's my character.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
So,
It's like being an empathetic person, it's so beautiful, but
but it's hard.
it's hard. And like you have to learn how to set boundaries in the process of it and learn not to internalize everything. Because I was like you, where I would intellectualize a lot, but then I would also internalize it. And then I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, this is too much. But it's like
Mm.
just being in a state of flow where it's like chaos comes by. You're like, oh, that's crazy. Next, happiness.
I get so absorbed though because I feel it heavy and it like bothers me because I don't want to feel it.
I get it.
It's like obviously there's some situations where you're like, okay, I'm not dealing with that. You can
Yeah.
walk away. Some situations
Yeah.
you literally have to sit there and just create a barrier, which is annoys me because then I'm like, I don't want to deal with this then and there too. But
Yeah.
I think just that experience itself is very again draining because you don't know where to channel it in
Yeah.
a way of okay, they're doing something's here, let it be, or like jumping in more so to
Hmm.
speak to be
Hmm.
like because I've had conversations with people where I felt something was off on them. And like I'm a communicator. Like I like talking to people. I don't just wear my heart on my sleeve, I wear my brain on my sleeve sometimes, which is
Hmm.
difficult sometimes. But like I'm okay having conversations out loud and just like coming to a conclusion or just moving on. For men and some
Yeah.
people aren't. So like just having people in my life where I can see something's going wrong and I'm like trying to jump not I guess it is jumping in and taking control of it because I want them to do good, but like just
Hmm.
being like, hey, like what's up, and then having a negative reaction towards it, being like, no, it's not that, and you're like, oh, it is,
Yeah. But it is,
and
and
then
I
just
know.
like, you
Yeah.
know,
And I'm the same as you, where it's like I always like want to try and like maybe help, especially if it's people that I care about. And I do this thing where I'll be like, oh, but I know that this isn't good for you, so let me help you or guide you into this and that. And maybe this is the mother in me ever since like my mom passed, where I kind of had to step into that. But you have to learn to turn it on and off. And my biggest thing
that's
is,
definitely what it is. Sorry to
yeah,
cut you off,
yeah,
100%.
for sure. And it's like, I love that I have these motherly traits, but it's such a pain in the ass all at the same time because I'm like, oh my God, are you lost and confused? Let me help you. But it's like, I'm not being a
Yeah,
fixer no more. Like, I have enough shit on my plate. I'm not fixing your bullshit. But I think my biggest thing is like learning to let people experience their life in the way that they need to. And if that requires them falling on their face and I have to be the person to watch it, as much as it's going to be heart wrenching, you have to let them do it because they need to learn the lesson. And kind of like I was speaking to earlier, some people need to feel the extremes. And if it's hitting rock bottom, then it's rock bottom.
sorry,
It is
yeah.
what it is. And how I always kind of position now is I will plant seeds, whether you choose to grow them or not, that's up to you.
You know what's funny too, because at the beginning of this conversation, you said with your mother passing and just taking on the roles that you had no choice with.
Hmm.
You kind of just went through like, I this is what I had to go through. Now you're in life, given opportunities to make choices, and you're still latched on to that. No, I don't have a choice to do it, and it's like stepping out of that, being like,
It's
oh, like
hard.
I'm in. Yeah.
It's hard. And learning to, and like I'm only coming to this realization now. Like ever since I went to this trip, I came back and like I feel like I'm Olivia. Like I feel like I don't need to role play the mom or like the therapist's friend or whatever it may be. It's difficult being able to turn it on and off, but you have to. You have to. And I look at it as like, okay, well, my personality with you is very different from my personality when I'm at work. You know what I mean? So I'm like, if I
Yeah.
can turn that on and off, then and I can get a grip on that, why couldn't I get a grip on like my motherly traits or the hypervigilance that I need to have with my younger brother and whatnot? Because it's like you're never going to fully just be you. And I think the biggest thing with spirituality that I'm stepping into more is just being. Just be. If you're going to become chaotic, that's okay because you're just being. If you're going to become blissful and live la vida loca and like be super happy, great, just be. Like don't have to be forcing any outcome or situation even if you think it's maybe in your benefit or that other person's benefit. Whatever will happen and as long as you're able to somewhat practice some sort of like detachment, but not in a cold way. I feel like detachment is such like a big thing that I hear going around now, but it's such a slippery slope because people will literally take that
Get
literally.
cold.
Yes, and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that's not what it means. Like detachment from whatever comes, whatever goes. Don't try and like create certain outcomes. But also at the same time, it's like I'm not going to be detached from my younger brother because I love him. So it's like finding that balance of when do we insert that detachment and take it out. But I think the biggest
Yeah.
piece of it is just, again, flow, finding that detachment and
Well,
flow. And whatever happens, it's just like, okay, I'm not going to internalize it. That was kind of crazy. On to the next thing. And just being so good in who you are as a person.
yeah, being hyper aware and sensitive is a lot because you sometimes getting into situations, you go into it like already trying to plan what you need to do, and it's like, where does that even come from? Like, what's,
I think it's,
is that something? Obviously, you went through what you went through. I went through what I went through
yeah,
growing up, but like, it's like, where does that come from? And then circling back to like, okay, if this is like, if you really want to take the time to figure that out and get into it,
yeah,
then you get into it, and then you have to be like, okay, what am I deciding here? Am I going to live in this cycle of being
hmm,
this way for this reason or not?
yeah.
You know?
And I think this is where like understanding psychology and human behavior is such a big part of like what it is that I practice because yes, I'm letting things flow, which is a spiritual side, and yes, I do my praying and my religious things, but also like understanding that all of it is usually linked to somewhere. And when I sometimes not even insert control, I think it might be subconscious control where it's like I would like certain outcomes to play out the way that they are, but it's never in a negative way. It's always like from a positive, like wanting to be
But it
influential.
becomes negative.
Sometimes it can, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think coming to that realization for myself anyway, I think a lot of people is fear. It's the fear of
Yeah.
abandonment. It's the fear of being disappointed. And maybe you've been through like X, Y, and Z in your life that has made you gone through certain things that you don't want to experience again. And for a lot of people, I find that sometimes try and like put so many pylons in their life to make sure things are guided a certain way. It's because they're scared of what it looks like outside of those pylons. So
Yeah.
understanding that piece of it, it's like, okay, this is rooted from fear. How are we going to calm our nervous system down and remind ourselves you're fine? Like if shit goes left.
What is your view on past lives?
Ooh, okay.
Do you believe in that? What's your take on that?
I do. I haven't gotten into it very heavily myself, but I do believe your soul travels into different lives. Um, and throughout those lives, they are building connections and bonds, which will be carried over into another lifetime. And through your soul's journey, you are picking up certain experiences that need to be further amplified in this lifetime, or there needs to be some sort of karmic pull away from it. So I truly do believe like everyone's soul. It's so interesting. I've heard people say so many different things too of how like everyone's soul is just one, but it's just you pushed out. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. How like your whole world is just your internal world mirrored out. And I was like, huh,
That's such a difficult concept to even
to understand.
wrap
But like I
100%.
think to some way like it is true. Like for example, let's say I always think that like people are always judging me. When I walk into a room, if people are looking at me, I could either perceive it, oh, they're looking at me because they think I don't know, my outfit's
You look
nice
great
or I look
today.
great. Yeah. Or I think of it, oh, they're judging me. And from that interaction will adjust the way that I conduct myself in that room. So it's
Yes.
like your inner world is reflective to your outer world. And a lot of times, like, you know how people are like, oh, you have soul ties with this person, or this person's your soul mate, or this person is like a karmic connection, or a twin flame, like whatever it may be. I feel like I truly do believe in that, but I feel like it doesn't necessarily need to be linked to like a relationship. Like for myself, I got out of like a karmic relationship, for example, where I needed to learn a lesson and this person also needed to learn a lesson. Whether they take those lessons that's supposed to come from that dynamic is a different, story. Whether they do it or not, I don't know. But for myself, I'm always wanting to grow. So I will always take whatever lesson is put in front of me and make whatever of it. But
Hmm.
I do believe in past lives. I do. But I
No,
don't
no,
know what
good. Keep going.
I don't know if I believe in it in the sense that it's like your soul was in an animal or stuff like that. Like that might be a little too much for me, but I'm open. I'm open. Like if one day at one point in my life I used to be a butterfly, I will be the butterfly. Like that is no problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I was asking you that because, like I said earlier, I go to an astrologer
Yes.
and she introduced me to that. And like really getting into the astrology aspect, she just says you get reincarnated from different lifetimes, and again, what you said, learning about different karmic lessons
Hmm.
or just like learning new things for your soul. I think getting off in that tangent will just keep. We would be talking for like 20
Oh my
hours and
God,
still
yeah.
not come to a conclusion, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But anyways, no, it's just been interesting because even like when you talked about karmic stuff and what you learn, is like I've heard these concepts before, and I've talked to her about certain relationships
Okay.
because in your chart she's able to identify who comes from where,
What are you? My
which is
friend
cool.
is like so
Yeah.
heavily into it. On this whole trip that I just went
You
on,
go? Have you
I
been?
haven't, I don't need to. My friends are all like, they know this shit inside and out. They're like, it's your eighth house. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, this is a whole different language to me. I'm like, I'm intrigued by it, but I think it's also so scary because I'm like, I don't want to meet someone and be like, what's your chart so I can tell you about yourself? And then whether I will see, and I'll see whether I'm going to proceed here or not. Like, I feel like it's interesting, but it's also so defining in the way that you kind of like carry yourself. It's insight, but you can't, like, for me anyway, like I wouldn't want to take it that literally, if that makes sense.
My answer to you was saying that 100%. People will still do that regardless of
Mm-hmm.
having a chart, though.
Okay, that's
They
fair.
would be put in be put in situations where they have to act a certain way, and it's kind of like, yes, it might not be aligned with your chart,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still acting in accordance with the way that you were capping yourself
Right.
off, like putting a roof over your head, so to speak. So I get what you're
Yeah.
saying. I think there's different variations of that, though. Regardless, I'm not like trying to offend
No,
astrology because
no.
I go to it all the
Yeah, no, it's
time, but
interesting.
people can have a good life doing it, have a good life not doing it, or vice
Yeah.
versa. Having a terrible life doing it, have a terrible life not
Yeah.
doing it.
I
So
think
it just depends.
it's
But
interesting just to learn about yourself. Like in a way, it's like almost like taking a personality test. Learn about yourself.
yes, well,
It
that's
doesn't
what
have
I'm
to be
saying. It's
defining,
like,
but some people will. And then again, like that's why like anything on an extreme level, you're like, it's too much. Like you can't.
yes, yeah. Well, I found myself doing that because I would go to. I'm not kidding. I've probably gone to her like every month this year.
Oh
Like
my
this year was
God.
so, but it's so funny because my life, like going back to life paths, I'm a life path 8, so learning about the flow. I'm in a year 8,
Mm.
which is all about flow. And here I am going to her every single month because I'm not allowing it to flow. You know what I mean?
Whoa.
Like everything just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You know,
What are you? I know you're a Gemini.
you have your rising sign, you have your moon, and you
Yes.
have your. Do you know yours?
I know I'm Sagittarius. Apparently, what's it called? There's a name when you have like four of them in the same sign. Do you know what the name is? I don't know. I'm
My brain.
primarily Capricorn, so the type A. So I get it. It's so type
So
A.
your rising sign is how you're perceived as to the world. Your
Okay.
sun sign is your personality, and your moon sign is who you are to yourself, and like your needs and wants at a
Mm.
core. So
Yes.
I'm a Leo rising. So
Oh.
does that make
Why did I think you
sense?
were a Gemini?
No, I'm a Gemini sun. That's who I am.
Oh, okay, yes.
But I'm a Leo rising. So like any situation I go into, I carry a Leo energy.
Got it. Okay, I
Does
see
that make?
that.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And my moon sign is Taurus.
Oh, I see that. I
So
see
like
that.
wanting that
Gentle love.
gentle, but like want my stability, need my.
Yeah,
If I don't get that, if I'm feeling a certain way, I'll just stop whatever I'm doing and just like, no, I'm feeling this way, which is
yeah.
annoying. But
It's interesting though to have because Taurus is also Earth, right?
yeah,
So it's interesting because I'm the same as you, where it's like I'm primarily Earth, but I'm also fire, and it's so interesting to have to want that like excitement and adrenaline kick, but also at the same time you need that grounding piece to it all. So it's like being able to kind of find that balance in all of it.
yeah.
It's complicated.
So you don't know what your rising is specifically, or is it Capricorn? When's your
Capricorn,
birthday?
December 2nd.
Oh, happy belated. Sorry.
Thank you. You horrible friend.
Yeah, horrible.
No, but
Okay,
I'm
so
a Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Do you know your moon or no?
Capricorn.
Oh,
I
and your
hate
rising
it.
is Capricorn too?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm type A as a motherfucker. Okay.
It's interesting because Gemini's very air. It's air. My
Yeah.
rising sign is fire, and my moon sign is earth.
Oh, right. Gemini is
So
there.
it's
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
It's not. There's differences,
Linear.
you
Yeah.
know. And it. You meet a Gemini, and some of them are like airheads. Sorry,
Right.
whoever is, and other ones are like very in tune with themselves. It just depends on
Yes.
the chart, obviously.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to all of that, what I learned out of astrology was you're becoming your sign. I come into this lifetime as a Leo and I'm transitioning to a Gemini, so the last
Oh.
my last breath here on earth, that's when I'm fully in the Gemini energy.
Oh. So does that mean
Yeah.
I'm going to be fully a Capricorn?
No, you're going to be fully a Sagittarius when you
Oh, thank
pass.
fucking God, honestly. I mean, no offense to Capricorn people. I'm like, I love my free spirited side more. The rigidness of a Capricorn, I'm like, it's great when it comes to certain aspects, but I'm like, fuck, I just want to live La Vida Loca. And Capricorn's so like, and it's great in some ways, but in other ways, I'm just like, I just want to be in flow. I want to be like
Yeah.
silly and call it a day.
Well, that's the thing about Sagittarius. What are they? They're half animal, half human.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Right? Like that's that whole thing with that. But Sagittarius is you're gonna have a hard time because their nature is like if something's broken, they don't fix it, whatever that be in themselves. So like
Really?
this is who I am. I'm not gonna change.
Oh, I don't like that.
Well, not it's gonna work for them.
Yeah,
Obviously, this I'm not like I
generalizing
don't know. I
everybody.
yeah, I'm not generalizing. Also, I don't. I'm still learning as I go. But what I
Yeah.
understood with like Sagittarius kind of energy is just being their own person, and
Mm,
if they're this way, it's kind of like,
take
oh, if
it
it's
or leave
not
it.
working, it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm still doing this today.
Yeah.
And if you like it, you like it. You don't, you don't. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that you might have difficulty. I'm assuming having your Capricorn as well on top of that.
The Capricorn in me is like, okay, it's the 1 + 1 = 2 that I'm just like, okay, so if this is the issue with me, how am I gonna like solve it? And I'm having this whole, I don't want to say identity crisis. I'm gonna call it the rebirth of Olivia. That's outside of like these roles and responsibilities that she plays. And I'm just like, what is the most efficient way of pulling this out of me? While also being like the funny, silly, playful Sagittarius. So it's interesting. And I'm not mad that I'm a Capricorn. I'm trying to understand what it means. But I know that there's a lot of rigidness to a Capricorn and very like structured, which I see in myself. But I'm like, I want to be more like La Vida Loca, you know?
Yeah, I'll definitely give you my girl's number. You can check her out. I think you would
Yeah.
like it because she even picks up things. Like I remember the second time I went to her, she was like, "I was just trying to pick up on." I'm like, "Oh, she has a little bit of a I don't want to say gift, but like gift. You know what I
She
mean?
can
Like
like
just picking up
channel.
on yeah."
Okay.
So have you done
I'm
tarot
down.
cards before? Do you
Yes.
do them?
Yes. I do them for myself. Well, I stopped doing them for myself, but I did used to do it for other people. I did a lot of readings for people, maybe like in 2022. I used to do more readings, and then the more I just feel like spirituality nowadays has become so commercialized and so phony that it just makes me not want to have any sort of involvement in it. Like, I went down the TikTok hole of like people pulling like tarot cards for this is for the general group or for the consensus. I'm like, there's a million people. Like, are you shitting me? Like, that this applies literally to a million people. Like, come on now. But it's such a slippery slope. And you watch one
I
video
know.
for 5 seconds too long, your whole fucking feed is that I'm like, I need to delete TikTok because this shit is making me spiral. It is watching my every second, and it is not it. But I found that when I do tarot cards, I'm doing a reading based off of this exact moment in time and what I am feeling energetically. And I think this is such a bigger conversation, whether you believe that there is a path or you have free will. And I find
They
that
coexist.
they coexist. And I
Yeah.
truly do believe in that. That's why it's like I can pull a card but it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. And sometimes when people,
I don't do that.
yeah, you don't
I
do
don't do
it,
that.
you
No.
take it literally. See, it's not good taking it literally
Well, to
because
be
it's like,
honest, when I do those sessions, it's a lot of information.
mm,
So, not to make myself sound dumb, like I'll be sitting there and my thoughts are just blank because I record my sessions and she goes,
okay,
just listen to it when we're done. I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
that's so funny. Just goes brain dead through the whole
Yeah.
process.
No, because it's like trying to piece it together and it's
Yeah,
just so overwhelming and I just shut off because I'm just like, okay, well,
absorb it all in. A lot of people who do it too don't always have the best intentions, and they sometimes say things that they're not supposed to say. Like, this is one big thing that kind of threw me off. When my mom was going through treatment, she went to a psychic or a tarot card
mm,
reader, whatever you want to call it, and they were like, "Oh, you're gonna live." So my mom, God bless her soul, came home so happy and so excited, shared it with my dad, didn't share it with me, but she was like, look, like I'm gonna live. And you know what? And it's like moments like those that I'm like, F you. Like, you really should not be saying such like heavy statemented answers to certain
mm,
situations because I can tell you maybe what I see, whether it's going to be a boy or a girl, whatever it is that like you might be having as a baby, but also like talking about bigger topics like health, life or death type of situations, like it becomes while you're practicing it,
slippery.
yeah, like you need to practice boundaries because people are coming to you wanting insight and they will take whatever it is that you're taking. And if you're doing it from a place where you're just making money and you don't really give a shit and you're aimlessly talking, that's when
Yeah.
I have an issue with it. And then they'll
Yeah.
also follow up with like second layered questions. And obviously, like any person is going to. But this is why when I practice it, I do incorporate human behavior and psychology because there is more than just spirituality, right? There's the free
Yeah.
will piece. And I think free will comes into play when it comes to the whole science part of it all. And I
Mm.
mean, religion, I feel like is just kind of like intertwined into all of it a little bit. But I mean, I paused for a long time because I just didn't like where it was going. And I didn't want to be involved in that community that was pushing this very commercialized, self focused ideology.
Well, people want to get into it and they go to the quickest answers for it, and everything now is very copy and paste. So, like, maybe them being an astrologer or a tarot reader, they were watching videos and learning from somebody who
Mm-hmm.
may or may not, gave the right information, or it's it really is a slippery slope because some people don't get into it because they really want a concrete yes or no answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sometimes looking at a card, like if you look at a card and I look at a card, we get two different
Yes.
things sometimes, and it's like, but what do you mean it's two different things?
Yeah.
There's something there that's so real and true about it,
Yeah.
but it's still different,
Yeah.
and you're just
And I think a part of it
it's
too.
the same that it's
Yeah.
there's different connections obviously, but like cards have somewhat multiple meanings,
Yes.
not to a T, but like, a generalness of it. And it's like, again, what you would see pull out one thing and I would
Yeah.
pull out another. And it's kind of like, maybe they coexist. Maybe I'm right. Maybe you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're picking up something else. Because I remember I did a reading and I was asking her about this trip I was potentially going on with two people. And she said, yeah, you're going to go on it. You're going to have a blast. The day before, I booked my cousin's bachelorette trip.
Mm-hmm.
So she was picking up on that energy.
Mm,
And
yeah.
she told me that. So I didn't go on the trip, and I was like, Glynis, like, oh, I don't mean to say her name,
Yeah.
but Glynis,
You
you
lied.
said I was going on.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, was it this? And she goes, oh, yeah. And it's not like she's like, oh, shoot, I messed up. It's just like, that's
It's
what it
not always clear
is.
cut, and that's why it's like when you do these
Yes.
readings, it has to be taken with a grain of salt because if it's taken so literally, you're like, well, this didn't equal this. Why didn't it equal this? Because there's free will, but then also shit always changes. But I think a biggest piece of it too is that a lot of times when people are reading the cards, this is the whole part that I'm like psychology and your own personal experiences matter. They will read it based off of their own personal experiences and hardships that they have maybe gone through. So I did a reading once with one of my friends that was going through a really, really hard time. I just did it for fun. I didn't like fully need any like guidance or confirmation or anything. And how she had read the cards was such a projection of what it was that she was going through. And I was like, not your fault, but also like, I can read that. And I know that this is a projection of your personal experience of what you're going through in life. How many other readings are you giving to people doing this if you're going through a hard time? And how many other people are also giving readings that are projections of the current situations that they're going through? I'm like, I don't like that. And a lot of times people are like, oh no, like you're just like the channel from the source down to here on earth. I'm like, but you're still a human in the midst of all of it. And there is going to be a little bit of rigidness and a little bit of translation that may not be coming directly from source. And for myself, like I won't practice my spirituality or give readings and whatnot unless I feel like I'm in a clear conscious space, because I don't want to be giving a biased message when it's supposed to be genuinely from source. And I see that all the time and it pisses me off so much, but it's like people don't know better. That's why it's like it's important for you to understand who it is that you're going to for these readings and kind of a little bit about their history and where they're coming from, or that they are taking those precautions of making sure that they genuinely are in a better level-headed space. But that's just me. Those are just my boundaries with like spirituality, because I've seen so much and I'm like, it just irks me.
Yeah, no, 100%. With having the abilities that you have, when you date people, do you channel with being like, is this right for me? Is this like my long term? And if you get the signs that they're not, you still know to stay in it. How do you like navigate that? Or like, did you even attempt to do that?
Yeah.
Whatever I just asked.
I have.
You don't need to say specifics.
No, I have.
With people.
I've been in every single one of my relationships I have been in. I have predicted not the exact outcome, but that it wouldn't work. And similar to how that analogy that I gave earlier about being like the dog with the chocolate, here on earth, like my physical being's like, oh my God, but I want this. This is fun. This is exciting. This makes sense. But spiritually, I'm like, fuck no. Run. Run. And I've done readings and I'll always like kind of journal them throughout my journey while I'm like dating these different types of people. But again, I always take it with a grain of salt, and I don't always want these to be like the full guiding light, but I will look into it sometimes. Like when I got out of my most recent relationship, like my ass was spiraling because it was a situation where like I had no control of, and like it wasn't per se between like him and I, and I needed to come to terms with letting the situation pan out and flow. And despite me being the dog here that was like, no, but I really want the chocolate, like this feels like it is right, this and that, my intuition was literally yelling at me to let go, because they were like, we are protecting you long term. It is not the dynamic that you would per se want to be in, because this person, if they don't take this lesson, they're not going to grow into the person that you need. So it felt like it was a karmic relationship, and I knew that deep down.
You had to go through,
But my ego was what got the best of me. My ego was like, no, but it isn't. And I booked it with every single one of my relationships. It's just my ego and my stubbornness that I'm like, no, but it could change, free will. The outcome could alter, which it very well honestly may in some circumstances. Like I don't know where my life path will take me. And I think when it comes to any of my ex relationships, whether it being lovers or friends, like I'm always open to see what will come my way. And an affirmation that I always put out is I am ready and open to receive whatever is in my highest good with ease and grace. That could be someone from my past, that could be someone completely brand new, and that could be exciting, but it needs to come in my highest good with ease and grace. I don't want no chaos. But I am able to channel it. It's just my ego that gets the best of me. And I think this is where the whole psychology piece comes into my spirituality, because you have to understand that it's not always going to be free flowing. Have you ever been able to
With
do that with like
um
friends, lovers, or do you like tap in like that or no?
I am in the process of getting on the other side of it, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Like of like
Yeah, like
tapping into it more?
not in that sense of like a spirituality sense, just
Hmm.
like experiencing what I'm going through, and just it's more of a psychological approach to it, I guess, because I'm
Okay.
not connected more so that way in the way you are.
Yeah.
I'll feel things, but I won't understand why, and then blah blah blah. But it just goes back to the flow and being like, okay, like I just letting go of like the expectation of what it may or may not be.
It's the
That's the hard part.
detachment piece. It's the ego. It's the ego.
Yeah.
And like everyone's like the ego's so bad. It's like it is, but it also protects you in so many situations. It's what you make of it, but it's the ego
It
of the
drives me
human
crazy you
being.
saying that because like my brain's like, what is it? Is it the ego? Are we good? Is it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It just it really is just finding that flow. Like
It is. And it's so hard because we live in a world where everything one plus one needs to equal two and we intellectualize everything, but you can't
yeah,
intellectualize some of your feelings. I know people that fall in love with the last person that they should be falling in love with. And I'm like, is that a trauma bond? Like, what is it? I can sit here and want to intellectualize and like puzzle piece it all together. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. Let the
yeah,
situation pan out the way that it needs to, unless it's like harming you or you know that it really is not it, then yes, boundaries and whatnot need to come into play. But in the meantime,
even what you said about the trauma bond thing, the hard thing is to say to yourself, it's not meant for them in this lifetime to understand what that means.
and it's the
And you're
ego
just
that's like,
like,
fuck, why don't you get it? But it's true. And I was listening to the song, and it was literally like, are we two lovers that are meant to be, but not in this lifetime? And I was like, oh, that's so sad.
don't say Taylor
No,
Swift.
no, not Taylor Swift.
Okay.
No, 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 no. I mean, no offense to her.
Just in your room.
Yeah. No, no. But it's true though, and I think it's hard because it's the ego, and similar to the dog analogy I made earlier, that's like, but I want it. But it's maybe not
Yeah.
meant to be, or it's not what's in your highest good, and having to accept that really fucking sucks. But it's better off you are in this moment of sadness versus long term misery. Is how I look at it.
Yeah.
Because you're not truly being understood or seen, or you're always having to be like the guiding light. Like, wouldn't it be nice to have
Yeah.
someone come into your life that actually stimulates your mind? I would love that.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
So,
Well, with everything that we talked about, do you see yourself getting more into it in the future, or do you see yourself being at this place where I'm going to do it, but also do other things and not solely, I wouldn't say focus on it 100%, but like make it more of a full time
yeah,
thing for you?
I would,
Or time will tell.
I think time will tell.
Flow.
Time will tell, Flo. But I also do, I know my purpose here on earth is to inspire and to help. And in whatever outlet it makes sense and is in my highest good, it will come with ease and grace. I think I'm working towards a few projects of wanting to do more like workshops and helping to heal people and have meaningful conversations and inspire people. And I think that's something I'm wanting to do down the line. So I'm open to it. I think I just need to find my space in all of what's going on, if that makes sense. So I want to grow it more, but I will grow it in different ways, whether it being volunteering and working with kids or people that are going through cancer, or my career, having meaningful conversations like these, like through a podcast, or doing workshops. I don't know. It might be a little bit of everything, and it likely will be because I'm all over the place in the best way possible. So we'll see where life takes me. It's the
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. It's just what it is.
Well, Liv, this was honestly, it was great to connect with you, and it's funny that we talked about flow in the number 8 because this is the 8th episode of the season. So, how weird is
I
that?
love that. Look at that. I love that.
But yeah, no, honestly, I really do appreciate you sharing the life you live and what you went through, and I think it's obviously, yes, I want everyone to listen, but for me, it was just great, just like having this conversation. So
Of
thank you.
course.